The 2nd Cav did an extraordinary charge this summer, tremendous amount of ground from the Baltics all the way down to Georgia. It's sort of a two-part question. What did that demonstrate from your standpoint? But more importantly, you have also called for a Schengen zone in Europe for military units so that there's freedom of crossing of borders among allied nations. Nothing to get alarmed with here, guys. Nobody's gonna be up to no good. And look, I don't think that that's necessarily an issue, but there are vestiges, there's paperwork and things like that. Talk to us about that charge, what it showed, and the importance of setting up this military free movement zone in Europe, especially in the countries that are going to need to be supported in the event that something unfortunate happens.
So 2nd Cavalry Regiment with their strikers have literally been all over Europe, and but also our 16th Sustainment Brigade, our Patriot batteries, and we're pushing people out all over the place. This is part of making our 30,000 look like 300,000 is by having American Army units all over the place. Now, these are not just helter-skelter. They're by design usually moving to or from an exercise or for an exercise. 2nd Cavalry Regiment, with their wheeled vehicle capability, though, gives us so much flexibility. Their ability to self-deploy really is important for us, and so they practice it. A couple of great things that have come out of this. Number one, this is heaven for junior leaders. I mean, you got young captains, lieutenants, NCOs, leading these formations literally hundreds of kilometers, river crossings, going through towns, interacting with populations across Europe, and then ending up in a live fire exercise somewhere in Republic of Georgia, Romania. It's a dream for a young captain to take his troop on something like that. It's also given me and all of us a lot more confidence in the maintenance. You don't know if you have good maintenance on your vehicles or your aircraft unless you really push them hard. And 2nd Cavalry Regiment has consistently maintained well over 90% readiness rate for their vehicles despite the thousands of kilometers they've been putting on their fleet. So that's given all of us a lot of confidence as well. We have to be able to move as fast or faster than Russian Federation forces. If we want to prevent a crisis, if we want to give our political leaders some options other than having to do a liberation campaign into Lithuania, Romania, some of that, we have to be able to move more quickly to communicate to a potential adversary that we see what you're doing, do not make a mistake, we are here. And that means you would have to be able to move very quickly, like in days. And so this is something that we practice. Now, what I just described is something that would be happening before a crisis. So it's not Article 5, obviously. That means we're going to be doing all of this in peacetime conditions. European Union road regulations apply, night flying. We don't have guaranteed access to rail, so we're competing for rail. So my job is to figure out how could we mass a formation in a quick enough time under those conditions. So that's why we realized that we needed to have the ability to move quickly, to have what we call cross-border military mobility, so that we could move quick enough to protect European citizens and to prevent a crisis. This is about deterrence. NATO has been working hard on this. In parallel, the European Union and the European Defense Agency have been working very hard on this to figure out how do you respect and protect sovereignty, how do you ensure everybody is compliant with the European Union road laws, but at the same time allow military formations to move across the border the way commercial vehicles are able to move, so that civilian leaders can have options. We're so much better now than we were even a year ago, but still, it's multiple agencies, multiple ministries in every country, laws changing. So I think we're going to keep working on this.
Two more questions. One is an equipment question. Your top priority was, when we spoke 4 years ago, was that you wanted the 2nd Cavalry Regiment to have a 30-millimeter gun on their Striker. That's been achieved. General Bassett and his team have worked really hard to deliver that capability, and that's going out there. You've talked in the past, but I'll let you reprise why that's an important capability. But more broadly, what are the 2nd, 3rd, 4th on your list of capabilities now that the force needs? You mentioned short-range air defense. That's one of the priority efforts units and precision fire. Talk to us about what's next on that list that you want the acquisition system to deliver for you.
So first of all, we're thrilled that 2nd Cavalry Regiment is going to have a higher level of lethality. And you heard the Chief of Staff of the Army yesterday. You've heard Secretary Mattis talk about the most important thing you can do every day is improve the lethality of your formation. So that's what's happening. The Army has responded, industry has responded, and so we're going to have a significantly more lethal formation in 2nd Cavalry Regiment with the 30 millimeter as well as javelin launchers mounted on top of strikers. We're not trying to turn strikers into tanks. That's never what was intended. They are infantry carriers. But by adding the firepower on top of those strikers, now you've got the ability to reach out and separate BMPs, BTRs, other Russian fighting vehicles to separate them from tanks so that then your armor killing formations can take care of that. So this is significant improvement for us. I'm very pleased with how that's going, and I appreciate General Bassett's team. As far as other requirements that we have, it matches exactly what you heard the Chief of Staff of the Army say yesterday at the Eisenhower lunch. Long-range precision fires, improved missile defense. Aviation is always going to be at the top of my list, whether it's assigned or rotational. The Russians never take us serious if we don't have Army aviation with us in quantity and quality. So my priorities match the Army's because we all recognize this environment. These are the kind of capabilities that you need.
We talked to Todd Walters, the chief of the U.S. Air Forces Europe, who said that you two are brothers. You spend so much time together that you're almost relatives. What's the future of air-land battle? And I used to remember talking to General Story about this many years ago about the formation of that idea. There was air-sea battle. Obviously, the folks were looking at that. Now that's a joint concept. And he said that you guys are working so hard on this air-ground integration campaign. Talk to us a little bit on the land component side. That he said that look, it's to give those options and to increase that deterrent capability. What are some of the things? Where's the future of air-land integration as far as you're concerned? As somebody who is the first commander in a tense time, as you're setting the foundation up for the leaders to follow.
So this is what multi-domain battle is all about. It's not just Army on the ground, Air Force in the air. I mean, it's not that simple. It's much more of a complex environment that we all have to operate in. I don't want to do anything without the world's greatest Air Force being deeply involved in it. We need them for transport, for support, for reconnaissance. They put the air in airborne. I mean, there's so many ways that they help us. And at the same time, I think we help them. I mean, it'll be U.S. Army Air Defenders protecting Ramstein, for example. The coordination required to neutralize enemy or potential adversary A2AD capabilities. It's going to require that mix of air power and land power to accomplish those kind of tasks if we ever had to do that.
Are the command and control nodes, as far as you're concerned, integrated enough because each one of the services is developing their own systems? Is there the degree of integration in that multi-domain battle space where the commanders all have an equal vision of what's happening on the battlefield?
Yes, and that General Scaparrotti is making us do that. I mean, the exercise program that UCOM has matured, continued to mature in terms of its sophistication and rigor. We had a great exercise earlier this year, and we're building on that. So I don't want to overstate it. It's the kind of thing that doesn't come in a box. Right. The joint team requires practice. You have to work through those things, continue to be familiar with each other, trust each other, understand each other's capabilities and requirements. And I think General Walters and I, we're trying to set a good example for everybody else in that.
Second, third echelon troops, are they, during the Cold War, there was a lot of focus on whether the guys who would come and fill in are going to have that kind of capability. You're working hard for your guys who are there. Are you comfortable that anybody who's going to be coming in and augmenting in that theater are going to be as qualified and ready as you guys are?
Well, the Chief of Staff of the Army has emphasized readiness. The Chief of Staff of the Army has emphasized readiness, 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 readiness. And so these brigades, armor brigades and aviation brigades and logisticians that rotate over to Europe are getting that experience both in theater but also on deployment. I mean, having to practice flowing from Beaumont, Texas, for example, to get into Europe. So I'm very confident that the Army is doing everything it can to make sure that everybody is ready to come here or Korea or wherever they might be required. The Army has, we just a few months ago did an EDRI, emergency deployment readiness exercise of a battalion out of Fort Carson. They did not know they were coming to Germany. They got picked up, flown over here, and drew equipment from a storage site here, and then went right into live fires. It's kind of the culture that Chief of the Army and also Commander of U.S. European Command have emphasized. And so I have to say it's fun. I mean, I love being a part of that. It's exciting. And we understand that, you know, there are a lot of other priorities that the department has. And so our job is to make the most out of what we have to accomplish the mission we're given. There's an old saying that's attributed to Churchill, you know, we're out of money, now you got to start thinking. And so that's how we are in U.S. Army Europe. Put more responsibility on young people. We get more from allies. We depend on the oxygen-like qualities of Guard and Reserve engineers and logisticians. That's how we're doing it.
Do you have enough people?
Have you ever met a commander that thought he had enough people?
Last question. You're going to retire. You spent decades in uniform and have built a reputation for great leadership qualities. Talk to us about what's next, and what advice do you have for junior leaders in an exciting time? It's a dangerous time, but it's an exciting time. You know, what are some leadership lessons you want to impart on them?
Well, first and foremost, I continue to be amazed at the quality of young people that continue to step forward to accept responsibility, to want to be leaders. I was talking to a young lieutenant this morning. That guy had all kinds of other choices, you know, and he grew up with his country being at war for 16 years, and he still, I want to be an officer in the United States Army. Or you talk to a young corporal that, one of the best warrior contestants, this guy obviously had other choices. He wanted to be a soldier in the United States Army, and now he's a non-commissioned officer. So as long as we have that kind of talent, keep stepping forward, then I am going to be very confident in what we're going to be able to do, whatever the crises might be. For me, there's three things in my life I care about: my family, Army football and Florida State football, and the Transatlantic Alliance. Seriously, I want to do something that touches all of them. I'm probably going to go to work for a think tank that focuses on Europe, and so I'll spend my time between Tallahassee, Florida, Washington, and Europe, and I'm excited about it. It'll you know, have to make that transition from being a soldier to being a retired soldier, but I'm excited about what's out there, the second half.
And what's the top leadership lesson? What's the one thing you've learned after 3.5 decades in uniform? Accept
responsibility. You know, old General Max Thurman used to say, take charge of all government property in sight. If you're there, you're the senior person, you own it, and that's what I always encourage young people to say: accept responsibility.
Sir, it's been an honor covering you all of these years. Fair winds and following seas on the new assignment, and look forward to staying in touch in whatever you do.
Be sure of it, Vago. Thank you.